Yep.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of The Coach and the Couch Potato. As always, I'm the Couch Potato, Jeremy. On the other side of the screen, we got Coach Slate. What's good, Coach?
Hey, what's going on, man? Exciting times right now. Exciting times in Buckeye Nation.
Absolutely. They say that the offseason's probably not the best time to start a podcast, but I think somebody might have been looking out for us.
Definitely looking out for us. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad Buckeye Nation is roaring right now because it gives us a lot to talk about.
It's crazy. Our rivals won a natty 2 weeks ago, and you would never know it by listening to them talk. Their fan base is absolutely up in arms. Probably rightfully so, because we've kind of stolen the thunder. We flirted with the idea last week of something happening, and that was Caleb Downs entering the portal. And lo and behold, he did. And not only
Wow.
did he enter the portal, but he's coming to Columbus.
Yeah. Caleb Downs. I mean, he's once in a generation type player. For Buckeye fans, you can liken it to Mike Doss type ability. The level of impact that he can have. I mean, obviously, you saw what happened with him at Georgia this year. I mean, he stepped in day one as a starter, and for Nick Saban's a DB guy. So if you think, you're just going to step in as a freshman and play right away, like that dude, Caleb Downs is a real deal. So definitely excited about having him in the fold. I mean, he's going to walk in and be a guy for us from the second he's on campus.
Yeah, he, obviously very, very highly recruited safety. OSU, most people say finished runner-up. I feel like that probably cements this. But as a DB, the chance to get play for Saban, you can't blame a kid for going there ever.
Not at all.
And, this time it came down to us in Georgia really, really big. If there was a lot of scuttlebutt out there as things happened that, he was apartment shopping in Georgia. And, you hear so many things in a situation like this. And then Berm came out and confirmed that he had turned in paperwork. He had gone apartment shopping. And at the end of the day, his heart just said, I can't do it. I got to go to Columbus. This is a win for the good guys for sure. From a fan standpoint, obviously, you want all the stars. Give me all the stars. Scheme matters, yes, obviously, but talent can make up for a lot of that.
Absolutely.
And if, with everybody coming back, there was, we'll say 2 glaring holes in the defense, and this allows you to potentially fix them both. You slot Downs in at safety, and then you move Sonny to the box, and you put a freak like that in the box, and then you've got a guy equally as athletic on the back end. That's tough.
That is very tough. Yeah, I'm a big scheme over stars guy, but there are certain kids that you just are plug and play. They're so athletic and they're so talented that you plug them in, you'll figure it out. The good thing is, he's a very versatile safety in our defense, and our defense is a safety-driven defense. So to have a guy of his ability to be that post safety for us, the ability to come down into the box as well and make plays, I mean, the dude is just special. And he's not the biggest guy. He's only 5'11", 200 pounds, but obviously when he gets here, he's only a true freshman going into a sophomore year, so he's going to get bigger. But he's got the bloodlines, man. Yeah, he's got the bloodlines. Dad played in the NFL. Brother played at UNC at receiver, now plays for the Colts. And his uncle, I didn't know this until last night looking some stuff up. His uncle's Dre Bly. Like,
wow.
Dre Bly is one of my favorite defensive backs of all time. Like, my brother and I used to buy so many college and rookie cards just to get that UNC Dre Bly card. Like, that dude was special. Obviously went on to have a great career in the NFL with the Rams, won a Super Bowl, couple-time Pro Bowler. So he's got good bloodlines, man. And this dude is just an all-around safety. Like I said earlier, for Buckeye fans, if you want to liken it to the excitement that we had with Mike Doss, that would be very comparable. From a player comparison, 24/7 had him compared to Justin Reed, who plays for the Chiefs. Very good safety as well. For me, I'm a Big Ten guy. He reminds me a little bit of a little bit smaller build wise of Bob Sanders, just a type of kid that can do everything. If you want him down in the box, he's going to bring the lumber. If you want him back at safety, he can go make plays. So he's special. I mean, he's a day one starter, and it takes our defense to another level. That's for sure.
This defense is going to be elite. This is a kid who, a lot of folks probably don't realize how big of a taboo it is to take a visit when you're committed, especially to a big program. And this is a kid that came to Ohio State after committing to Alabama. Everything pretty much says the kid wanted to be a Buckeye, and then he watched our defense not perform super well. And so, he stuck with his commitment to Coach Saban, and, we end up with him. The other thing that really excites me about this kid is something we hit on last week, and he's a punt returner. The kid's electric with the ball in his hands, and, all the intel out there says that was a big part of the pitch was, we will let you return punts. And as I kind of vented about last week, I couldn't tell you the last time that I felt like Ohio State had a guy back there that was a threat.
Yeah.
And now we've got one.
Yeah. No, that's big. I mean, obviously, special teams is such a big part of the game. Parker Fleming's not around anymore, but we as Buckeye fans got on him quite a bit for some of the blunders that we may have had special teams wise. He's a difference maker. I mean, I know there's a highlight of him getting that punt return against UNC or Chattanooga. I know it's Chattanooga, but you can just get a glimpse of what he can do when he's got the ball in his hand. So definitely going to be a huge part of our special teams, especially punt return. That's going to be a big deal for us.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff. Like we talked about so many times, with some of the guys coming back and everything, this isn't the type of stuff we're used to seeing as Ohio State fans. And so, we're relishing it, we're soaking it in, and we're rolling with this. So it's a big get. Obviously, with the transfer portal, we did lose out on Caden Proctor, going home to Iowa, but that's okay. You can never blame a kid for going home.
Never.
But at the end of the day, you still came out with the number one player in the portal.
And
that's not the only good news. Yesterday received a commitment from in-state D lineman Dominic Kurtz.
Yesterday.
Kind of a late bloom offer. A guy you've told me for a year that you thought should be in the class.
Yeah.
So stoked for that. You obviously seen the kid play more than I have. What's he bring to us?
Yeah, no, he's a very versatile guy. I just hit the table and it started shaking. He's a very versatile guy. He's got the size. I mean, he's every bit of 6'5", 260 pounds. He really fits that strong side defensive end that the Buckeyes really want. Who can get after the passer, after the quarterback, but we really want him to be there to set the edge, help us stop the run. He can be that guy. His frame, he's going to get bigger. He's going to be 280 pounds within the first 2 years of being here in this program. So you're talking about a guy who has position versatility now to be a 5 technique, strong side defensive end, and then to be able to bump down and as a 3 technique and really anchor that B gap. This is a guy like you said, he should have been in the class, in my opinion, from the very jump. I'm big on getting those guys from home and taking care of them first. He is a guy that he is a 4-star kid, and although that is a big deal, he is a Ohio State caliber player, and he was committed to Washington. And as you can see, Washington played for a national championship, so they saw something in this kid, and to kind of get in on him a little later than I would like to really bothered me a little bit, but I'm glad he ended up here. I hope moving forward, we're able to take those Ohio kids and wrap them up, those Midwest kids, wrap them up immediately, so then you have a foundation and now you could go swinging for those big fish. So Kirks, I'm excited about him, man. His ranking probably is a little skewed because he was injured part of his senior year, and he did transfer from Riverside to what's the school? St. Joe's, via Angela St. Joe's, or however you say it, up in Cleveland. So I think that kind of messed with his ranking a little bit, but I think Buckeye fans should be excited about this kid. He talked about it when he had an interview yesterday with Berm. His dad grew up a Buckeye fan. He said his dad was pretty emotional the other day when they were on campus and they got the offer. Like, So that's a kid that wants to be a Buckeye. His family's committed to being a Buckeye. So it's definitely going to be a good fit.
Yeah, you hit on something that I think is a very polarizing topic when it comes to recruiting. How soon do you offer the Ohio kids? Urban especially had a tendency to slow roll a lot of the Ohio kids, and I get it. And to some extent, the last few years, Ohio hasn't been what we're used to it being.
Yeah,
Um, at least from a national perception, I guess. There's been some guys that have outplayed their rankings and stuff like that. Um, but the next few years, the 25 class, especially in Ohio, is insane. And
it's
it
pretty good.
does seem like we are um, opening that, taking those commitments right away. There's been some scuttlebutt that at least one of the running backs is going to commit sooner than later. Dorian Brew, I still consider an Ohio kid. Yes, he's in
Absolutely.
Texas now. Kind of postponed his commitment though. A little bit of cause for concern there, but
Yeah.
Coach Walton will, OG Walt, as we're
Oh,
saying these
OG
days,
Walt, man,
as
he's
the
killing
fans
it.
are saying. So I do think I'm with you. Don't slow. If there's an Ohio kid you want, go get him.
Absolutely.
Don't slow roll it, because that kind of hits on, again, from the fan side of it, I've said all along, I want some guys with some dog in them. And
Absolutely.
when you're playing the team up north and you are an Ohio kid, it just hits different. You
It
can
definitely
only
hits different.
embed that into a kid who is, a Florida kid, a Texas kid, a California kid, so
Yeah.
much. And those Ohio kids just bring, that much more want to it, just like the Ohio guys that go north, Charles Woodson,
Absolutely.
Desmond Howard, two of their all-time greats are Ohio kids.
Yep. Yeah, and it's they have a pretty good understanding of what the rivalry is, and for those guys that went to like a Charles Woodson who could have gone wherever he wanted, like a Desmond Howard could go wherever he wanted. You still go to Michigan or the team up north with a little chip on your shoulder because you grow up thinking about playing for Ohio State in Ohio. Like I don't unless you're I don't know in Northwest Ohio, which we can have a conversation about that. There's a ton of Michigan fans in Toledo, but you grow up with that little bit of a chip on your shoulder. If you were to be in Ohio, maybe not get offered, or be in Ohio, but you still chose to go to Michigan, you feel like people hate you or people have something against you now. So there's that definite chip on your shoulder. So the more Ohio kids we could have, more Midwest kids we could have, like I'm all for it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, so many people get wrapped up in, stars, scheme, what way to go. And I get it. You see Alabama, Georgia hauling in guys that are the top rated guys, but
Yeah,
where, you swing for the big fish, and, that's how you kind of top that whole thing off. We've been burnt so many times by, let's go, running backs, for example.
oh my
Um,
gosh, I know.
you know, we've gone after the big fish early, and they commit, and 3 days before signing day we lose them. And there's
Yeah,
equally talented kids in Ohio who would have gladly came to Ohio State.
absolutely.
And you just kind of run them off, per se.
Yeah,
Um, Sometimes it works. You get like a Mayan, for example, who is really underrated in a lot of ways. He wasn't going to wow
so
you,
underrated.
but it wasn't his game.
Yeah,
He was a bowling ball, and that's literally his job. I mean, when you need 3 yards, go.
yeah, yeah, and I think especially with the running back position, like the NFL has kind of really changed the way you view the running back, as far as like extending them or giving them the big contracts. I think a running back sometimes they're late bloomers, man, and I don't really look at stars when I when I look at running backs. I look at their vision on film. I look at the power that they run with, and then I look at their scheme fit as well. I think you could do well just recruiting the Midwest for running backs. I think you could do very well. I totally get why we go down to Florida and try to get those Mark Fletchers and try to get those generational type players. We just haven't had a lot of success, finishing with those guys. So I wouldn't mind if we stuck to Ohio and Texas when it came to running back recruiting. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like in 25 we're not going to have to leave the state, which is great.
No, heck no.
Anytime you can get a kid whose name is Bo Jackson, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
He's got to be a stud.
Yeah, for sure. So, it'll be interesting to follow and see, especially with a big change in the staff that just happened this week. We have an OC, Bill O'Brien. From the social media view and the fan perspective, a lot of people hate it. And I don't. I woke up to a text yesterday morning. It was like 6 a.m. from our boy BG. And he was like, I don't think I dislike it. And I said, I don't hate it as much as most people do at all. Is it the sexy hire? Not at all.
Not at all.
Everybody wanted a splash, and you don't need a splash. This team needed an elder statesman on the offensive side of the ball. Somebody similar to Jim Knowles who allows Ryan to run a program. There are so many elements to running a program that people will never see. And Ryan has a great support staff. The Pantones, love him or hate him, Coach Mick, the Marion OG, Coach Henton. Henton. What Coach Henton does for that program is probably as unheralded as any. Because it's everything.
It is everything. We could have a conversation about that in itself. Like that, Coach Hinton, I'm fortunate to still be in touch with him and talk to him quite a bit. And the work that he puts in, the hours that he puts in at those camps and the 7-on-7s and different things like that, like it is not an easy job. Him and Ed Terwilliger, another Central Ohio legend, they take care of business. And that's something that, Coach Day feels like he can just pass off to them. So, that's big. That is huge. But I digress. I can talk about Coach Hinton all day.
For sure. I mean, there's a reason, and most people that are going to watch this would never pick up on it. But if you see Coach Day on the sidelines on game day, Coach Hinton is within 20 feet of him at all times.
All times.
Shout out Coach Hinton. But back to Bill. He allows those guys to do all of the other stuff. Coach Day should not be in a meeting with a laser pointer saying, why aren't we hitting this block? Or on defense, why are we missing this tackle? Coach Day is a CEO. And especially in today's day and age, that's more important than ever. So O'Brien brings you somebody to kind of commandeer that entire side of the room. And I think what a lot of people are worried about is that you're going to see the Bill O'Brien offense, which to the casual eye, and you're going to go into this a little bit better, a lot of play action stuff, which there's nothing wrong with that, especially with what Will Howard is going to bring to you.
Absolutely.
Incorporating additional play action is A-okay by me. But I think these guys are all professional enough, they're all intelligent enough that you're going to see it still be the Ryan Day offense with Bill O'Brien's handprints all over it.
Absolutely. And the one thing to remember, though, too, is, Ryan Day has an NFL background when it comes to offenses. If you look at our offense, we run an NFL pro-style offense. So there are more similarities than differences in their scheme. So for Coach O'Brien to come in and run Coach Day's offense, it really won't be much of a change for him. So, I have a little bit of a different perspective. There's a lot of people that were hitting me up too, like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we getting this guy? Like, there's a part of me that understands that, it's not a sexy hire given the names that were out there, the Liam Cohens, the Jason Candles and things like that. Like I totally get it. But there's one thing that Buckeye fans were asking for all season long, and that was for somebody to replace Kevin Wilson. How are we going to find a way to replace that veteran leadership that we had with Kevin Wilson, who, by the way, was also freed up very much so by Coach Hinton to really just focus on the offense and coaching the tight ends. But again, I digress. I could talk about the guy all day. But, you need that type of veteran presence on this staff. I'm just going to be completely transparent about it. Coach Day has only been a head coach for 5 years now. Like, he's not been around for that long. He was not a head coach prior anywhere else. He hadn't been an OC for that long. And so the idea that he is able to kind of run things and call the plays, like, at some point was going to catch up to him. So now that it's caught up to him a little bit, and understand Ryan Day's offense is still fantastic. Like, it's not something that he should ever be ashamed of, like, oh, I'm giving up play calling. But it's something that he needed to do. And to have a guy like Coach O'Brien who's got the experience. The one thing I will point out about Coach O'Brien all the time is his time at Penn State. You know, he took that job and got hit with sanctions immediately after being hired. He was playing with so many walk-ons. He was playing with people that, you know, weren't necessarily Penn State caliber, and he still found a way to have a winning record as a head coach in those 2 years there. You know, his first quarterback was Matt McGloin, and it's not a knock on Matt McGloin by any means, but you're talking about a guy who had completed 54% of his passes the year before Coach O'Brien got there, started every game, and only threw for 1,500 yards. And then when Coach O'Brien gets there, Coach O'Brien turns him into a 60% passer. He throws for over 3,000 yards, and he only has 5 picks as compared to 24 touchdowns. Like, the team was solid. They weren't like some trash team. They were playing teams very tough and very physical. And Matt McGloin turned into an NFL quarterback. Like, he was able to go play at the next level. And then you want to take that to 2013 with Christian Hackenberg, who was supposed to be this all-world, you know, talent, and he was very talented. But if you look at his career, he had 1 year with Coach O'Brien, and what was his best year? It was that year. After that, he kind of fell off a cliff a little bit. And so that time at Penn State, just from that alone, the adversity, the probably the pressure you probably feel, not only from like the president and the AD, but just from the Penn State community in itself, you're adding that to our staff now. So he knows how to be in a crazy situation and handle it. And then he goes into the NFL and he wins the AFC South 4 times. He goes to the playoff 4 times. He develops Deshaun Watson into a budding star. And regardless of what you think about Deshaun, his time in Houston was pretty good. And was there not some controversy? Well, yeah, there was. I mean, Bill O'Brien, although it might be a great coach, I don't know how great of an general manager he was. But, you know, he's got that going against him a little bit from a fan's perspective. But just look at what he did. I mean, Deshaun Watson had some of his best years with Coach O'Brien. And so, like, for me, like, this is a guy who checks all the boxes that Coach Day needed in an offensive coordinator. Is it sexy? No. But I'll be honest, the 2 GOATs of our game, Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, they hired him multiple times. I think he's good enough for Ryan Day. I think he's good enough to be our offensive coordinator. You hear, you know, I went back and was reading some interviews of Bryce Young the year he won the Heisman. And, you know, Coach O'Brien was under so much scrutiny, but you hear about the way the guys talk about him. Even Will Anderson on defense, they rave about him. You know, they loved how straightforward he was and how he was able to chew your face off, but able to joke around with you at the same time. Like, you want to talk about a guy who developed some really good quarterbacks. Like, you just cannot deny that with Coach O'Brien. So I think it's got potential to be good. Totally get why some people don't like it. It's not sexy, but just give it time and be patient. Like, from a coaching standpoint, this guy can do it. He can do it all.
Well, and, you know, scuttlebutt out there says we're going to see the BOB effect potentially sooner than any of us really thought. There is a ton of smoke, and, you know, this is similar to the Caleb Downs scenario last week. Except for the fact that Julian Sand's already in the portal. And I believe a lot of that is attributed to Bill O'Brien.
Absolutely.
You know, obviously Alabama has its own issues going on right now, and we'll touch on that. but for a guy of Sayan's caliber to, not only enter the portal, but to essentially from the moment he entered the portal, every insider out there says Ohio State.
Yeah.
As of this morning, the latest I have heard is, it's OSU and USC, which he's a California kid. But that, if he wants to come on board, OSU will take him.
Yep.
And that's attributed to Bill O'Brien and Bill O'Brien only.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if you watch some of the highlights of Julian Sayin, a kid's special. He's got everything you want in I almost said franchise quarterback, but I guess you could say that now. He's got all the tools that you would want in a franchise quarterback. He's got the arm talent. He is so accurate. He only threw one interception his senior year. He is a guy that is very, very good. And I love Aaron Nolan. And I think Aaron Nolan has the potential to be a Michael Penix type guy who can really do some great things for us. But if you have the opportunity to play or bring in Julian Sayin, who's the number one quarterback arguably in the country, we're not in a position to turn that down, in my opinion. We have just, brought in Will Howard because we didn't believe that the guys that we had on staff or on the roster were ready to take that next step. So I think you have to be in a spot where you are willing to bring in as much talent as possible. I totally get it, the human side of things, the loyalty that you want to show to Aaron Nolan, and that is something that is huge. But I just don't think Ohio State's in a position to say no to Julian Sayin. I think he's got that type of upside to him where he could be a real game changer for us. And the only thing you need to look at, in my opinion, was his player comparison on 24/7 Sports. It's J.J. McCarthy. You already passed on J.J. McCarthy once. So if you have an opportunity to get a kid who could be that type of player, you got to bring him in. And I hate giving the team up north much credit about anything, but JJ was the reason why they won a national championship, in my opinion. He was the difference maker. Didn't have wild stats all the time, but when they needed to make a play, those legs came in handy and he made a play. So you have an opportunity to get a guy that's similar to that, I say bring him in.
It definitely is a polarizing topic.
Yeah.
But and let me say this before I go into this. I keep turning my head this way. The Lady Buckeyes are playing Iowa right now. We've got a banger. 75-73 with 4.5 minutes to go.
There we go.
Caitlin Clark is just unreal.
Yeah.
But as far as, what the quarterback room looks like and the effects it has, let's just call it what it is. Coach Day arguably missed on Kyle McCord.
Yep.
Kyle McCord was a good quarterback. I'm not going to say that he's not. The kid is playing at a Division I level. Started at Ohio State, led us to the Notre Dame win. He just, he missed.
Yeah.
And then
McCord just never took that next step.
No, and that room has been off, we'll say.
Yeah.
You try to keep a room, especially that room, in kind of an order. And the whole Ewers deal threw everything off a year. So now you're kind of chasing your tail.
Yep.
So, as it sits, you've got Will Howard, who didn't come here to not start. Let's be honest. Then Lincoln and Devin are both competitors. I think that they both have all intentions of, going through the spring battle, see who the backup is, and then you could lose one of them. But the other caveat to that is a lot of folks have always deemed Lincoln to be a little bit of a project. So I don't think he came in with the intent to start his freshman or sophomore year. I think at that point, you would potentially look at losing Devin. But Devin's also shown that he's a competitor. We're going to burn the boats. You can't teach that.
No, you can't.
I obviously, Air coming in, you don't want to have to rely on a freshman to play big minutes unless they come in and just absolutely blow your doors off. If he
Yeah,
comes in and he shows up all of these guys at practice and camp, then we got something to talk about. Uh,
absolutely.
you bring Julian in. I envision the room to kind of be Will Howard and the two freshmen. Um, Lincoln may stay, to do that backup role. But one thing Ryan Day has always struggled with, and we have kind of not been in the spot to allow it, though, we've got to get the younger quarterback snaps.
Have to.
We saw that in the Missouri game.
Yeah,
As good as we think Lincoln can be, he just was unprepared. So if you do go into the fall, and Lincoln and Devin leave, then you're looking at Will Howard and two freshmen.
yep,
Not ideal,
not ideal.
but a lot of folks say one of the biggest attributes that Julian Sayin has is out of this entire class, he's going to be the guy ready to go first.
Yep. He's talented, man. He's talented.
He's legit, but
Yeah,
as you said earlier about the human side of things, I feel bad because Aaron Nolan has stuck with his commitment for a long time.
absolutely.
But again, he's a competitor too. You don't come to Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, any of the big programs and not have to compete.
Yeah,
And there was some scuttlebutt that the coaches have talked to all four guys already, explained what might be happening. And we'll see. But I think either way, especially if he comes, I think your quarterback room is really back on track. That gives you would probably bring in a depth piece if
definitely would have
Lincoln
to.
and Devin leave. But then, Will Howard graduates, Aaron and Sayin battle it out. Then you have Tavion coming in at 25, who in a perfect world is not coming in alone.
Yeah,
And that builds you right to where you want to be.
yeah, for sure. I think one side of this though that, and I want people to understand why Ohio State may have had some pause about bringing Julian Sayin in. It's 5 quarterbacks. How do you get them reps in practice? How do you get them reps, equal reps, those backups especially, and not make somebody feel like they are being slighted? I know that's not, well, screw the feelings and all those things, but that's not just from a feeling standpoint. That's from a logistical standpoint as a coaching staff. How can I ensure that these guys are being developed? Because at some point, one of these guys is going to be the guy. So how can I ensure that these guys are getting reps in practice? Ohio State is going to, if Sayin does commit and if Sayin is, brought into this class, that is something that, Coach Day, Coach O'Brien, Coach Hartline, they're going to have to sit down and come up with a very strategic plan on how they are going to divvy up the reps. 5 quarterbacks, 5 scholarship level quarterbacks. That is extremely tough to kind of navigate. So I think it's very important that we understand that. I don't think Coach Day would ever say like, I don't want him. I just think just the logistic thing, the logistic side of things that go with bringing another really good competitor into the fold, it's something that has to be really planned and drawn out. So I think people need to kind of settle down. I don't think Coach Day was ever saying like, no, we don't want somebody like Julian Sayin. I think he was just, how are we going to make this work? So, I trust Coach Day, Coach O'Brien. That's why they get paid millions of dollars to do what they do. So hopefully, he does come and we get that figured out. But Julian Sayin, I mean, Elite 11 winner, one of the most accurate quarterbacks I've seen on film. He can do it. He can do it all. So be hard to turn him away.
We've had pretty good luck with Elite 11 winners. So
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a great point.
A lot of folks don't put a lot into camps. And I get it, but there are certain things camp can tell you. That's probably honestly my biggest critique of, Arch Manning, for example. Arch Manning never went to a camp.
Yeah.
To me, you play, he didn't play a high level of competition in high school.
Yeah.
We'll call a spade a spade. So in that situation, I understand your last name's Manning, your genes are phenomenal.
Yep.
But why not go show out against the best in the world, unless you are trying to keep something under wraps.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But that's the Bill O'Brien effect.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens. And if Sayan decides to go elsewhere, I think we're still fine. I like Will Howard the more I watch him. And I think, Devin and or Lincoln, I wish those guys good luck in whatever they decide. If they stay at Ohio State, I hope that they kill it, they get better, and they're ready to go next year.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, just like for the coaches, they have to make the best decisions for their teams. These guys have got to make the best decisions for themselves. And more now than ever, it is a business decision.
Yep.
If you have a chance to go somewhere that you feel like is going to make you better, elevate your game, make you more money, be it NIL, be it in the league, no hard feelings, go.
Yeah.
And
I think one thing I wanted to point out really quick when we just wrapping up the Bill O'Brien talk is, the idea that, we're bringing in a veteran offensive coordinator for Coach Day to be the CEO. We are already seeing the fruits of that right now. The idea that, Coach Day is not having to sit down and to do everything as far as getting the offensive, installs and things together for the spring. I'm sure he's already doing that and being a part of it, but he can focus more on hitting up the boosters and doing more of the fundraising stuff and talking to the collectives. And we're seeing that, so kudos to Coach Day for finally, I say this all the time, like putting his ego in the trash can, and letting somebody else come in and try to take care of business for the betterment of the program. So that's not an easy thing to do. So just wanted to point that out really quick.
Yeah, for sure. And like you hit on the NIL stuff and Coach Day, I could go on for hours about that topic. So we'll make that a different time, different conversation.
Yeah,
but it's a cause, I guess you would say, that I have been a huge advocate of for a long time. So it's really cool to see.
Well, yeah, I mean, from your perspective too, with the memorabilia and the autograph signings and things like that, I can only imagine, when the kids weren't able to make money off of that, like you got hundreds, if not thousands of people showing up to see Braxton Miller to get an autograph, that he can't really take anything from that. So I'm excited. I'm actually really excited to just kind of sit back and listen to you talk that episode, because that's a different side of things I never would have even thought about.
Yeah, I mean, and over my shoulder this way, sitting there, I moved a different piece today to try to keep a different piece in the kind of the background. So I've got a JSN helmet with his whole Rose Bowl stats, and that was done while he was in school. It was one of his first legal signings. It's just really cool to see. So before we go down the rabbit hole, I will say, support the foundation, support 1870.
Absolutely.
One of the cool things the foundation's doing, and the number I looked right before we came on, they're doing 50/50s.
Oh, really?
You can even purchase online. So case in point, at the ladies game today, you've got a sellout crowd, and they're promoting their 50/50 on the Tron. The number was almost 10K, winner takes half, and it's still got 10 days before they close it out.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
That is pretty cool.
And then, to keep going with, in the Buckeye world, there's still a giant elephant in the room. There's still a coaching spot open. And by the way, the Lady Buckeyes are leading by 1 with 16 seconds left.
Let's go. Let's go.
So, we've seen threes. James Laurinaitis out on the road recruiting. And, he's allowed to do that because we have that hole. Obviously his name is probably the most tied in name to that 10th opening. And if that's the way it goes, that's awesome. I do think it'll be somebody on the defensive side. I think we are set up good on the offensive side now.
Yeah.
Um, really the only other name you're hearing outside of James, and it's a swing for the fences situation, uh, is Jason Taylor. Uh,
Yeah.
Anytime you can even have a shot at bringing in a Hall of Famer, that carries more clout than a lot of people realize.
Oh my gosh. Talk about a recruiting pitch.
Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if it does, that's awesome. If not, just like they proved with the Bill O'Brien hire, um, I trust Coach Day.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
will be an awesome thing to monitor and see. Do we go to a Larry Johnson succession plan? Do we bring in a linebackers coach? Being a defensive guy and knowing the makeup of the staff,
Yeah.
what do you feel is kind of that glaring hole on the staff?
Honestly, I really do think it is that second defensive line guy as far as having a succession plan in place for when Larry Johnson retires. I don't like talking about it because, he's earned the right to coach until he wants to stop. And if that's when he turns 80 years old, as long as he's recruiting at a high level still, like, so be it. But I do think our kids on the defensive line love LJ. So I think it's important to have a plan in place for when he leaves, because what you don't want is he retires and then kids jump into the portal because he's not there. People decommit because he's no longer there. So I think it's important to have that in place. From a schematic and a coaching standpoint, I'm thinking as far as like being the defensive coordinator, I see the value that Coach Laurinaitis threes brings as a coordinator. I would want to bring him on staff. I would want to bring him on staff immediately so then I can be freed up to be that co-defensive line coach with Coach Johnson. So now we always talk about the jack position. Who better to coach the jack position than the person who built his defense and his fame around that position as well. So from a defensive coordinator standpoint, that is the way that I would view it. From a program standpoint, though, having that succession plan is huge. As long as you can ensure that Coach Laurinaitis is not wanting to exit after this year, if he does not get hired full time, I think you could go with the defensive line. But I know as a coordinator, like the way that he's recruiting, you're already seeing just him being out on the road for the couple weeks of this offseason. It's a big deal. The guys love having him around. So, man, I go back and forth. From the program side of things, I can totally get why Coach Day would want to bring in that co-D line coach and have a plan in place, especially if it is a guy of Jason Taylor's caliber. But from a defensive coordinator side of things, I want to find a way to get the best 11 guys on the field. I want to find a way to utilize CJ Hicks in a way that, we could maximize his athletic ability. And not just him, the Joshua Mickens, the Arvell Reeses, those are guys that all have that similar ability. Well, then we're going to hire threes. We're going to make him the linebacker coach so then I can be free to kind of coach that defensive end jack position up. So that's the program and the coach side. I think threes is just so valuable. And you're already starting to see that. He's going to be a Buckeye forever. Like, he's not going to go anywhere, especially if he's hired full time right now.
Yeah, I agree. The Jason Taylor thing is a cool pipe dream. But you have to remember his son is playing in Miami.
Yeah.
Somebody, and the guy's actually a Miami fan. We were talking about it the other day, and he put it really good to me. He compared it to me getting offered a really good job, but it meant that I can't travel to go watch my son do what he does.
That's tough.
So I get it. But it ultimately also depends, what is Taylor's end game.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think the Laurinaitis hire would make the most sense.
Yeah.
I do think you have to work on the succession plan, even though it is very poetic that Um, when Edric Houston was, on the brink of going elsewhere, it was because of an LJ retirement rumor, and then Saban
Yeah.
retires before LJ.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
very poetic. So we'll kind of monitor that, and then we could potentially, that could be next week's
Yeah.
big talking spot. We'll see what happens.
Hey, one real quick, one name to keep an eye on. If we were to hire James Laurinaitis as a full-time coach, he's currently an assistant D-line coach with the Buckeyes right now. His name's Alan Clark. He has worked with so many NFL defensive ends, defensive linemen in the offseason. That's what he's done, and I think that's why they brought him in to kind of help out LJ out. That is a name to keep an eye on as far as, if we bring threes in, do we kind of change Coach Allen's or Alan Clark's role as far as, does he become a quality control guy instead of a GA? Like, what does he become? So that's just something to pay attention to. I know that the players respect him and that he's well respected in not just the college world, but the NFL world as well.
That'd be exciting to see, because obviously the name that had been floated out there for years now is Randall Joyner.
Yeah.
But with what Ole Miss is doing, how do you leave?
I don't know, man.
So that will be interesting to monitor. One other coaching caveat that we kind of missed on, Corey Dennis has been relieved as the quarterback coach, but he is still staying on in some capacity. I like this. Again, this is kind of like the Bill O'Brien thing. I like it more than most people. I think if you move him into like a quality control or even a GA type, I know there's rules and restrictions on GA.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever said Corey Dennis can't coach and can't recruit.
No.
I think Corey Dennis kind of took the bullet for the whole Kyle McCord thing. And so keeping him around, I think in the grand scheme of things, is going to be really good for everybody. In the event that, Bill O'Brien moves on in 2 years and Corey has matured, you can always see that. So, how awkward does that make that, though? You've been a head coach at, on the high school side of life, big programs where you live under a microscope. When you're dealing with a transition like that or a coaching issue like that, how does that affect not only the staff, but the guys?
Yeah. I've obviously been a head coach. I've seen it within bigger programs as well. It is tough to make decisions that you need to make, but you become tight with these people. You become family with these people. You've come up with these people, and then you feel like I'm in a position where I don't have an opportunity to continue to ride with this guy. I gotta replace him. That is tough, and it's very important to establish from the very beginning that this is a business. This is a business at that level. I've got to do what's best for the program, and so that side of things can be very difficult. Sometimes there are some programs, some staff members who have some animosity towards the new guy that comes in because hey, you just replaced my boy, so you deal with a little bit of that, but I think it's important that, the head coach gets out in front of it, explains exactly why, and just doesn't do it without their input. I think that's important as well. So somebody like Bill O'Brien coming in to replace, the staff understands it. And one thing that we didn't mention earlier too about Bill O'Brien, we want Brian Hartline to be here forever. We want Brian Hartline to be developed and possibly be the next head coach if Ryan Day ever were to move on. Who better to learn from than a guy who learned from two of the greatest coaches of all time? To get a different perspective and somebody who's been in the game for so long. So it's another positive of having Bill O'Brien here, but making those changes is never easy. It's important to let the staff know the why behind it before actually just jumping forward with it. I know Buckeye fans, we aren't the most patient. We aren't the most understanding, but Coach Day doesn't owe us an explanation on anything. He owes that coaching staff, he owes the kids the explanation as to why. So that's the toughest part, but you get paid $10 million, you got to do it.
Yeah, that's a great point about Hartline. everybody realize or does not realize, he's still a really young guy, and his coaching chops are new. I mean, he kind of got elevated quick, and it's
Yeah.
working. But you know, even to be an OC, to be kind of catered by Bill O'Brien is going to be huge for him. Just like Laurinaitis, even as a quality control and a GA, getting to work with Coach Knowles.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's been a wild ride this off season.
Yeah.
Um, you know, to me, it's definitely the most memorable off season ever.
Yeah.
Except for maybe Tatgate. But that was obviously for a whole different reason.
Yeah.
Um, where does it rank for you?
It's sorry, it's definitely the most memorable for me. Like you just mentioned with Tatgate, like that was crazy. Now that I think about it though, like sit down and think about it. I think about TP being interviewed after the Arkansas game and he can't even answer any questions. Like, yeah, it's just I gotta tell the story. I got a good story about Tatgate. So my first year as a coach ever, 2011. I'm going into these clinics as just like a fan. Like it's hard for me not to get excited and look at Luke Fickell talking about defense, and it's like, oh yeah, that's Luke Fickell. You know what I mean? And so this was like in the middle of all the Tatgate stuff. Coach Tressel is going through it. He's being drugged through the mud. How could you be loyal to this guy? How could you do that? How could you let these people sell their gold pants? All these things. And so there was a social at the clinic, and all the Ohio State coaches are all around. And, I was coaching outside linebackers at Pleasant at the time. And so I went over and I was listening to Coach Fickell talk a little bit. And it was awesome. Like, it was great. We talked about the 3-3-5 defense and how Coach Fickell felt like the game was kind of developing into that manner of more of an odd front, and sure enough, that stuff came true. And I'm sitting there with a beverage in my hand, just having this conversation with Coach Fickell, like I actually know what the heck I'm talking about. And I turn around, and freaking Jim Tressel, the sweater vest, walks up to me, and I got like starstruck, like instantly, like, oh my God, it's Jim Tressel. Oh my God. Oh my God. And he comes to like beelines for me, and he comes right at me and he says, "Hey, tell me one thing that you've learned at this clinic." And I'm like, dude, the GOAT just put me on the spot. Like, this isn't just a GA, this is Coach Tressel. And I said, well, just had a conversation with Coach Fickell, and I think that, the game is developing more into a spread game, which is going to bring about odd fronts. And I'm an odd front guy, so I'm excited to see that evolution and the different things that I need to teach to be ready for that. And he said, I'm going to leave you with this nugget. And I kid you not, I say it the first day of practice to our staff every single year. He said, you defeat complexity with simplicity. And I will take that with me forever. It's so true. We can have a whole conversation about that when it comes to coaching defense. But here's this guy. He had aged about 10 years in a matter of 2 months as the head coach going through Tatgate. And he like took 10 minutes to kind of pour into some young, dumb idiot who actually thought he knew what he was talking about. And like, that's why forever Jim Tressel will always be my favorite coach. One of the coolest moments of my coaching career for sure. That was definitely a fun time. Sorry.
No, that's good.
That
He also took in a pleasant game or two, right?
Yes, he did. Yes, he
Uh,
did. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That was yeah, he came into our coach's office after one of the games, and that was crazy. I turned into a fanboy. I hate saying that, but
it happens. There are certain
it
times that
happens,
you
man.
just get, and that's like you said, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there are certain guys that you just see, and it's like, holy hell, like,
Yeah.
um, I get it. Um, so yeah, the Taggate stuff was crazy, but on a positive note, I mean, coaching changes for the positive, the retention of the guys. Um,
Absolutely.
the portal additions. I mean, it's wild. Within a week and a half, Ohio State has became hated again by everybody. We've got the
Yeah.
Georgia fans hating us, the Alabama fans hate us, the Michigan fans hate us more than ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, most memorable offseason for sure. And then, we'll see what happens from here to make it even more memorable because it's not done.
No, definitely not done.
We got another portal window in the spring. We've got another coaching hire. Um, so yeah, we will roll with that to kind of finish everything up today. But before we go, we would obviously do our Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do our top 4 Ohio State quarterbacks. This was a hard one because I like to try to keep it to guys within my lifetime. So
Yep.
that's
Me too.
a stab to Rex Kern, Corny Green, Tippy Dye, any of those guys.
Yeah. Not a stab at all.
So my top 4, there's nowhere else for me to start but Troy Smith.
Okay.
To me, he's the GOAT of OSU quarterbacks.
Yeah.
The guy was a killer. Went through a real tumultuous road to get to where he got.
Yes, he did.
Returned kicks. I mean, that's the thing that is really cool. So Troy Smith won. I have to go with CJ Stroud at 2.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the natty to go with it, but when you look at everything he did for the program, brought to the program, he's got to be my number 2. Number 3, rest in peace, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Again, kind of got that whole path started to where we're headed now. Dwayne,
Absolutely,
to
he did.
Justin, to CJ, to see where we go. And number 4, it's tough because obviously I put Cardell on my overall Mount Rushmore favorite
Yeah.
Buckeyes, but this will surprise some people. And to drop another Marionaire shout out, we're gonna go shout out John Ratliff on this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put your boy JT Barrett at number 4.
There we go.
I am probably the biggest JT hater that either of us know. I was overly critical, but to give JT the nod over Braxton or TP, you talk about a guy who willed his team to wins. It's JT. So
Absolutely.
JT is my number 4.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty solid number 4. Some are pretty solid 4. Some people are probably going to question mine, and that's okay. I look at things from a little bit of a different perspective when it comes to quarterbacks. I just look at, can they win games? Are they taking care of business when we need to take care of business? And so my 4, your GOAT is going to be excluded from my 4. How crazy is that? Troy freaking Smith, I'm not going to put in my 4. But it's not a knock on him. He won Heisman. The dude was phenomenal. Like you said, his story was great. But for my personal 4, number 1 will always be Braxton Miller. Like I said, I don't think we get Urban if Braxton's not here. I don't think we get a JT Barrett if Braxton's not here. So I just think from a legacy standpoint, from his imprint on Ohio State, I just feel like he's up there, with some of the greatest ever. So Braxton would be my number 1. My number 2 is JT Barrett. People hated on JT, and I get it. But like you said, I watched the guy play through injury after injury. I watched the guy say he couldn't win big games, and then he comes out and has that big game, big fourth quarter against Penn State. He was a guy that we could count on. And that was something that stood out to me. I love running quarterbacks. I love a quarterback who, if you need a yard, he can go get you a yard. As a defensive guy, I love that. My number 3, this is where it's going to get a little different. Craig Krenzel.
like
Craig
that.
Craig Krenzel is easily my number 3. He found a way to win games in the fourth quarter. Special dude. He was not the most talented, but he just figured it out. I was who was it the other day on Twitter? C. Grant. Somebody posted a picture of random quarterbacks, and it was Craig Krenzel, and he was like, that's my quarterback, the TO thing. And so Craig Krenzel's up there for me. The Purdue game, the national championship year, that freaking dime he threw to Michael Jenkins will always stand out to me. And you want to talk about the epitome of like the Tressel era. Like I think he was that. And then my last one would be Justin Fields. I think, from a talent standpoint, he had everything that you could ever want. And he wanted to be a Buckeye, like when he went into the portal, he looked at things. Obviously, he was going to come into a situation where we thought he was going to have to compete with Tate Martell, and he didn't end up having to. And he just was really, really freaking good. So talented, had everything you would want in a quarterback, and he just fully immersed himself into what it meant to be a Buckeye. So that would be my top 4. I left TP's one of my favorite, and I left him off the list. Obviously, Troy Smith's the GOAT, but those would be my Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks that I enjoyed watching the most.
I like it. And that's what's cool. That's, when we set out to do this thing, we knew there were going to be different perspectives. And that's what, so far is awesome. So yeah, no worries there. It was tough. You leaving, Troy off, me leaving Braxton and TP off. It's tough.
I left CJ off too, man.
Yeah, but there's no wrong answer.
No.
There's so many guys. So I can't wait, to keep building on these. Next week we may throw a wrench in things and do a non-OSU one. We'll see what comes out.
Yeah.
But this week, last week we did the shout out to Dr. King. We always try to keep things, throw some shout outs out there. Today I want to shout out the Ohio State women's basketball team. In overtime beats Iowa and hangs 100. And shout out to the fans who sold the shot out today.
Big time, man.
We're all about football, but we're Buckeyes at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So yeah, with that said, I think we'll wrap it up. Any parting words today?
No, man, it was appreciate all the support, guys. The video, that we put on YouTube, over 300 views now, and the people that are subscribing. Jeremy and I just wanted to get on here and talk Buckeye football because we love it, and if you can find something that you like in it, that's awesome. So we just appreciate the support. We appreciate all the feedback as well. We're going to keep doing it, man. And so hopefully we can continue to grow these things, that we don't have technical difficulties.
Yeah, no doubt.
We got some stuff we still got to figure out, but it's definitely fun, man.
Yeah, and with that said, to grow, we're gonna do we're gonna run some giveaways.
Here we go.
Try to get the following up. So I'm gonna throw this out there. We get to 200 followers on YouTube. We're gonna give away a Sean Wade signed 8x10 to a random follower. And we may even get generous and do 2.
Okay.
We'll see what we get, but we'll that'll be our first one.
Yeah, there we go. That's good, man. That's awesome.
So, all right, guys. Well, it was awesome. Again, like Slate said, thanks for the support, and we will see you guys next week.